In this short video, I'm going to take you through a couple of things. Mainly how you can create formula that span different sheets. So how you can pick up different values from different sheets and use them in a formula on, say, the third sheet. The other thing that we'll look at is a concept of absolute cell references, and it's a bit tricky, that one is, so we'll talk more about that when we get to it. I just noticed a tiny mistake though here, so let me just rename this sheet because that's just going to annoy me that people and salaries had a space in front of it, and it's just going to be a bit confusing, so I'll fix that up. So this is the scenario then. Okay, what we've been asked to do is to give our company a grand total for a project that's going to use different categories of skills, labours, trades, etc. Somebody wants to know what we think it will cost to put together a building, say, that uses all of these different people here: engineers, labourers, electricians, plumbers. This is their annual salary, and they've given us this sheet as well that shows us how many people in each category they anticipate will be needed to complete the project on time. It's a nice, neat January to December project, and you can assume for simplicity that if you need 25 labourers in May, it's for the whole of May. So it's a scenario. It's just something that will perhaps become a feasibility study that somebody could say, yeah, well, if it's going to be over 3 million, we're not going to do it. If we can get it in for 2.5, then yeah, it's a goer. Okay, so our task is to I'm just going to fix up these column widths a little bit so that we can see it a bit easier. So our task is to end up with numbers in here that tell us how much it's going to cost us for one engineer in the month of January and 25 electricians or whatever it was in the month of July on those different salaries, and to come up with an anticipated grand total. So here goes. Let's have a look then. That's where the engineers' salaries are and the labourers' salaries and all the different trades and services and professions. That's how many are needed, or that's how many we've told are anticipated needed. And this is where we're actually going to build the formula. So let's just pick on, I tell you what, I'm going to go for, no, I'll stick with engineers, okay? Now remember, we need one engineer for every month for the whole thing. So you just say to an engineer, hey, Mr. Engineer, can you please work on this project for us? And he or she may say, yep, that's all good, and you take them on for the whole year. Let's just assume that for simplicity. Now they're on 190,000 and we need one for the whole project. So let's kick off a formula then. Let's think about this. So remember, every time you start a formula, you hit the equals sign, and notice that it started to build that formula in the formula bar. The formula bar we're going to use quite a lot in this example. We're still on the project cost estimate sheet, but now I'm simply going to click on the project and salaries sheet. And notice what it's done in the formula bar. It's starting to build the formula, because now when I click on 190,000, it's not only put equals people and salaries, it's also put E5. Peoples and salaries is in those little exclamation marks, and the not the exclamation marks, the little comma things. Oh bloody hell, what do you call them? Whatever you call them. And then the exclamation mark determines the difference between the sheet and the cell on the sheet. So on the peoples and salaries sheet, go and get me the value that's in cell E5. Remember, we're still building a formula over on the projects and estimates sheet. Now what we need to do there, to get the value for that for 1 month, we need to divide it by 12, agree? Okay. There's a great temptation here for me to press the enter key, but we haven't yet finished, because we want to multiply the value of 190 divided by 12 by the value that sits in the number of engineers for January. So if you look at the formula now, people's and salaries sheet E5 divided by 12 multiplied by the anticipated needs cell E5. And if I press the enter key, it's going to pop us back over onto the projects and cost estimates. And I'm just going to take the font size down a little bit here so it doesn't do that on me again. Oh, it might be a bit small anyway. So no, we'll keep it at that and see if I can just center it up a bit better. Something like that. Okay, so basically what that now is saying to me is that if you're telling me that an engineer costs 190,000 and we need one of those in January, well, that's actually going to cost you $15,833, which is one engineer for the month of January on that salary. Okay, now if we then say, okay, well, we want to copy that down, and we can use the intelligent fill handle to do that. Okay, so all the way down to the bottom here. What that's actually done for us, and it's important that you get this because the next point about absolute cell referencing really depends on you understanding this point here. If I actually copy that formula down by one cell, what it actually does, if you see here, it says E5. Oh, my network's a bit slow here, so the mouse keeps jamming up on me. E5 divided by 12 multiplied by anticipated needs E5. But if you look in this cell here, what it's done, it's gone down one cell to E6. So it's picked up the salary for a labourer. And not only that, it's gone to the anticipated needs sheet and picked up the number of labourers in E6 that it needs in January, which is exactly what we want it to do. So it's smart enough to know that you've moved that down by one. It just adjusts the cell references in the original formula and places them in the cell underneath, all adjusted nice and neatly for you. So if we look at project manager, it's people and salaries E10 and anticipated needs E10. People and salaries E10 is a project manager, and on the anticipated needs it's a project manager as well, is in E10. So that's all well and good. The problem starts to arise when you do this, because if we take that over to the right, okay, if you remember when we moved it down one, it went, okay, well, I'm in 5, so I've gone down 1, so I'm going to change all the cell references and pick up the next one, so I'll change it to E6. Now if I take that theory and just apply it to a move over to the right, so it's now actually going to say, all right, well, instead of E5, we're going to make this one F5. Agree? And we don't want that to happen. Well, we kind of do. We want it to happen for the anticipated needs sheet, that part of the formula, because you want it to come over into F5. But if you think about it, you definitely don't want it to do that here, because if you come over into F5, there's nothing in there. So hopefully that's shown you what happens when you don't, when you're kind of like moving it to the right, but there's nothing in the right, in the cell to the right on the salaries page. So essentially what we want to do is we want to go into this original formula in the formula bar and put a $sign in front of the letter E. Now that is very significant, because once you do that, it means that if that formula is copied to the left or the right, it will never adjust the column. It's absolute. It's absolute on the column. So fortunately, that means when we move it over to the, when we copy it to the right like that, it basically does what we are expecting, and it's staying on E5, which is the salary for an engineer, but it's adjusting to F5 for the anticipated needs. So if we just pop over into, say, February for an engineer and make that 15, we're hoping that that number has jumped way up, and which it has, which is good. And if we change the salary here, let's just say that we'll make that something ridiculously low, it's also still picking up the value from E5. I'm just going to undo those couple of changes then. Okay, so hopefully that has given you an insight into this whole thing about absolute formula. Essentially, by putting that $ in front of the column only, it simply means that when you move the when you use the intelligent fill handle, or you copy and paste a formula, so if I copy that formula and paste it here, it does exactly the same. It sticks on the E. It doesn't take its eye off the E. But of course, when we want to move it down, we don't put the $ in front of the 5, because we do in fact want it to move down. Whoops, sorry, let's just copy that one down. We do in fact, we still want it to stay on the E, but we want it to adjust down so it comes and picks up the various salaries for the different skills and trades and professions. And what that actually means is that I can go one down there, all the way across there. I'll fix up these column widths here so that we'll display all of that lot. Okay, and then if we pop in a total here for each month, and we're struggling with these column widths again, let me just copy that format over there, won't be a tick. All right, and do that, and then do this, equals sum, and we'll sum all the totals. And we've got a budget there of 2.14 million. So based on my, I think I said at the outset, if we could come in under 3, well, we'd be all well and good. So now what we could do, of course, is just kind of like reversing that a little bit. If we went over onto this sheet here and we wanted to play around with these salaries, what we could do is say, okay, let's just type an equals and we'll just link to the grand total. So I just typed an equals, and I'm simply going to click on the grand total and press the enter key, and what that does for me, it gives me the value that's in cell P15 on the project costs estimate sheet. So what we could do now is say, okay, well, if we change the salary, let's say we could get engineers for 130,000. Notice it's 2.142 million at the moment, 2.082. So because we only need one engineer for the whole 12 months, it's really not having that much of a difference. However, if, say, for instance, because we've got, who have we got a lot of? Labourers. So let's go back onto the project, the peoples and salaries, and let's say if we said labourers 45,000. So let's say we can get labourers for 45,000 instead of 55. It goes from 2.1 to 1.9. So that's how you could start playing around with that, because of course you've got all of this happening over here, which gives you the grand total. Hopefully you got something out of that. I've always found that absolute formula a bit of a tricky one to explain, but hopefully you got it, and that's how you can link things across different cells to give you the overall grand total. And it looks as though we're going to go ahead and get building. Hope you found that useful. Catch you next time.